Evening, everybody. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2019. And if you'd join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee LaRue,
Here.
Trustee Marks,
Present.
Trustee Everson,
Here.
Trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard and our legal counsel, Roger Zappa. Committee member present in the Planning, Rec, and Roads is Mike Springer.
Thank you. Any public comment? Does anybody want to share anything with us before we get started? Okay. Might have somebody else coming in. I don't want to, it's Lisa, okay. More than likely, she won't want to comment. Did you want to comment, Lisa, before I jump ahead? Okay, thank you. All right, so we have no board member comment. So we'll need approval of tonight's consent agenda, which includes approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 5th. Bills payable in the amount of $168,775.20. Sorted reports. Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority Board Meeting Draft Agenda of March 20th. The draft minutes of February 20th. And the resolution to place recycling on the Marquette County-wide millage proposal on the August 6th primary ballot. Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority meeting minutes of January 17th. Recreation meeting draft minutes of February 19th. Roads meeting draft minutes of March 5th. Planning Commission minutes of February 20th. Peter White Public Library Township Advisory Council minutes of December 5th, 2018. Fire Department activity report and the Sheriff's activity report of February. And I had no report tonight. Financial statements from February of 19, and of course our annual and monthly and weekly charter communications, notice of transfer of franchise, and letter regarding channel additions. Anything that needs to be pulled out of there for anybody?
I just have a comment when I get to my board comments, and that's all.
Okay. So,
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I just need approval of the rest of the agenda unless there's some changes.
I'll move to accept the regular agenda as amended. We're going to remove or is it on here? I was going to say the solid waste presentation because they are not going to be here tonight, so they'll be on the agenda for April, the second meeting in April. So approve the agenda with that amendment.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So staff reports. We didn't have any conflicts of interest, I'm taking it. Fire department, we had the fire chief here, I think, the last meeting, so there's probably no update from him. Public Works, probably same thing. Stop me if you hear anything exciting, Randy. Assessing, I don't think there's nothing really going on.
Well, your Board of Review is in process. Currently, I believe you have one more meeting of the Board of Review left, and then that'll be completed for this year. I believe for your next meeting is going to be an updated SEV and taxable value report from the assessor. We've had a sizable increase again at the end of 2018 for 2019, so that I believe that'll be reported at your next meeting.
Okay. April 2nd meeting then. Okay. Roger.
Well, in the past month, a lot of the items that I've worked on have actually been agenda items, so not too many secret things, so to speak. for me to report on, but we researched the issue of attaching liens on properties in which the road commission fixes obstructions in the drainage systems. There's a way of accomplishing that. That's in your board packet tonight. We had a personnel issue that also evolved into some questions on policy governance and so forth. One personal property tax issue that I've been working with the deputy treasurer on, an ongoing fairly complex land division issue that's been in the works for about 4 months, but is probably drawing to a close. Several instances of just board members or staff seeking clarification of opinions issued over the last several years on a variety of issues. We finalized the whetstone pilt, we finalized the recreational marijuana ordinance, and we finalized the internal loan agreements. And that's pretty much a summary of what my office has covered since the last report I gave you.
Sounds like we're your only client. You wouldn't know it. Okay, any questions for Roger? It's kind of hard to do, but in case there's comment. How about community linkage? Anybody hearing anything from the public, our external environment to share? Ernie?
I think we probably all have heard that, the potholes in the township and that. And the question is contacting the township, and I keep telling them it's not our roads. We have to contact the county to do that. So there's a lot of concern with that. So that's the biggest thing I've heard all week, the last 2 weeks.
Okay. Pete?
Resident on Granite Avenue, Granite Street down there, concerned about the water runoff. Right now it's run into his garage. Just kind of concerned about the thawing and stuff like that, like everyone else is concerned about, so.
Anything else? Oh, Randy?
Yeah, just dovetailing on both of those comments, basically. We, in the last week, have lost about roughly 3 to almost 4 feet of snow bank in the township. Last Friday evening, we had a fairly sizable runoff along Wright Street that damaged Forestville Road. So if you're going to be transiting around Forestville Road, be cautious, take your time, be slow, and observe the barrels. The barrels are there for a reason. Part of the road did wash away. The road commission was there that evening, and I'm not sure where they are in the repair of that as yet. But pothole season is definitely here. And it's not restricted to the local township roads. US 41 is in bad shape in many places. So please bear with the road commission and slow your speed down. You don't have to go 45, 50, or 55 because the speed limit's posted at that. Go a little bit slower. Try to miss some of the potholes, but stay in your own lane. We've had a couple of incidents where they did have some side joinings, shall we say, little things. But anyway, it's going to get not necessarily worse, but it's going to continue for the rest of this week. We're supposed to be in the 50s close by Saturday. That means rapid melting and runoff. So we are going to be facing that. Basically, we had all of our winter snow in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So it'll all be dissipating at the same time. We had no thaws this year.
Okay, John?
Just an added comment on the problem on Forestville. It was an extremely serious erosion of the roadway itself, and it was caused by a downflow of water from Wright Street that was permitted to come and make the turn and go into Forestville Road. Anyone that takes a look at that will witness an extreme departure of the roadway. About a third of it is gone.
Right.
And they put up barrels, and I'll just add to the report, they put up barrels and they've added some dumping of sizable amounts of dirt to deviate the flow. I think they're on top of it. They're doing the best they can, but it's an extremely dangerous situation.
And what's happening, just so everybody recognizes what's happening, is that the detention basins that are in several areas, because of the heavy snowfall all at once, are either ice covered and the water is running off of them over their banks. And that's what happened here, is one of the detention basins basically spilled water into a ditch that hit a frozen catch basin and ended up diverting right onto the roadway, and then it just followed the roadway to erode it.
You got about a 3-foot wide crevice, about 4 or 5 feet deep. And part of it is washed away roadway. So they've got some work to do, and they have some work to do to make sure that won't happen again.
Okay, thanks. Committee updates. Mr. Dave, what have you got for us?
Well, there was 6 items on the Planning Commission. 3 of those items are on tonight's agenda, so I'll just skip past those. The commission did review comments from the Marquette County Planning Commission concerning the political sign text amendment. As you already may be aware, review and comment by the Marquette County Planning Commission is required when amending our zoning ordinance, and in general, their comments express concerns with respect to the enforceability of the ordinance based on its narrow scope, political signs, and suggested that it would be enforceable in a broader scope as temporary signs. Inasmuch as this request for text amendment originated at the board, the Planning Commission would like direction from the board. Would you like to proceed in that broader scope and have it sent to legal for review? So we'd like you to consider that. The other item that is not on tonight's agenda later is the Fry Chevrolet buffer yard. We did hear a request from Fry Chevrolet for changes to the requirements passed on April 25th of 2018 to change the buffer yard along their southern boundary. That request was unanimously denied, and the commission requested that the April 25th agreement be completed as is. With respect to the road committee, we dealt with the 2019 road rehabilitation bid recommendations to the Planning Commission and the manager. That's on tonight's agenda. And we did receive a complaint from Granite Street with respect to some work that was done a couple years ago on the road rehabilitation program. And final recommendations for that were presented to the manager for his consideration.
Okay. Do you, anything on recreation?
Recreation, we just finished that meeting tonight, so it'll be at April 2nd meeting.
Do you want to expand a little bit on your recommendation on the planning side with the political signs? Are you asking us to look at something now?
No, I'm just wondering if because the board made the initial recommendation to explore political signs, and once that was sent out, it has to go to review for the Marquette County Planning Commission. Their comments came back, and I think the attorney could probably address that as well as I can, is the narrow scope when it just included political science might be a non-enforceable issue, and their suggestion was to make it a little broader scope to encompass temporary signs in general, and the attorney might want to weigh in on that.
Or even add it to the temporary sign part of the ordinance?
Well, temporary signs are defined, and political signs are listed under temporary signs. So if the ordinance on the 60-day window or whatever we wanted to come up with for that, if it just addressed temporary signs as opposed to political signs, it might be more enforceable according to the county's recommendation.
Okay.
But that would certainly, we should look at a legal review before it goes that far. The question to the board is do you want the Planning Commission to continue along that way?
When
Well, Randy had his sign up.
Push your button.
I guess this is where it really originated from the clerk's office, because I've gotten questions, especially last year, about when you can put your signs up and when they have to come down, and there's really nothing out there that limits that other than taking them down 10 days after the election. So I was looking for some sort of a window there, and that's where it is now. Our attorney has looked at it, and he actually issued an opinion many years ago on it. If he wants to highlight that, but I don't have a problem if you don't want to go any further. It's just that I was looking for some direction for, because we'll be in election season this time next year, so. So I guess I'll defer to Roger, and he can explain what we got previous to this.
Let's see what John wanted to say first.
I would encourage the planning commission to take a look at the political sign issue and come back. I think that's fair. And they can work with the attorney, because it is a precarious area to get into. But I think they have every good incentive to take a look at what we can do, because it has been abused in the past.
Roger?
The board adopted an extensive revision to the sign ordinance portion of the zoning ordinance in 2012. And there's a multi-page opinion that I can easily regenerate. When I just became aware day before yesterday that this was being discussed, I went and re-looked at that. But essentially, if you're looking to single out political signs, both Michigan and other jurisdictions have essentially held that you can enforce your 10-day limit, which is in the after the election. The signs can be forced to be removed within 10 days after the election, because the sign really has no speech value after the election is done. However, enforcement of a 45-day or a 60-day time frame before the election is essentially invalid and unenforceable. And we addressed that in 2012, and there is an Attorney General opinion from 1984 that also discusses that at length and cites certain cases, and I updated the research to make sure there have been no new developments that would contradict that in the intervening 7 years, and there have not. So, if you wanted to perhaps regulate all temporary signs, that no temporary sign can be up longer than a certain specified period of time, that might come closer to being permissible, but then you're going to draw in all kinds of other temporary signs, such as real estate listings. If you pound a for sale sign in your front yard, that's a temporary sign. Garage sale signs, that's probably not a really good example, because those aren't typically advertised that far in advance. But any type of signs that are not permanent, but are temporary, could fall under that umbrella. So I haven't specifically seen what the amendments, the text amendments that are being considered, those haven't been sent for me to review yet, but just in general, those are some of the principles that would govern what is permissible and what is not permissible.
Pete?
Do we have to worry about if the signs are in the county right away or 30 feet back and after? Is that the county, or is that our responsibility? That's county, correct?
Well, if it's in the right-of-way, it's county, but you can regulate what goes in somebody's front yard if you wish to do that. That's part of what your zoning ordinance is all about, of how many feet back someone can build their garage or their gazebo, or have side setbacks, or maintaining clear sight distances and so forth on corner lots. So you can regulate what goes in somebody's yard in the sign ordinance as well. So, I mean, you've got two different aspects of
Regardless
it.
where it is, if it's, 5 feet from the road or 10 feet or 30 feet, right?
Clear vision areas.
Yeah.
The county already has, and we looked at that.
You have one.
The county already has specific ordinance with the distance from a curb or the distance from a highway, the paved shoulder edge. They already have ordinance for that, and we weren't, Planning Commission wasn't attempting to get on top of that. They were just attempting to regulate the amount of time that the sign could be in the yard. The rest of that stuff is already covered by county ordinance. So the Planning Commission doesn't have any problem proceeding with changing a little wording and getting legal to review it. I would just ask the board if they want to just continue.
Dan?
Enforcement. Who enforces it? I mean, there's signs, political signs out there from last September that I see every day on Werner Street. Who enforces it? Who makes them take them down? Apparently nobody.
We're supposed
So
to.
why have rules and regulations if they're not enforced, I guess? Is zoning supposed to do that?
Department, planning. It's your pleasure, gentlemen.
The planning commission, as I see it, is just asking for a chance to take a look at it and come back to us. That's all they're asking.
Well, they're asking if we want them to.
Okay,
Do we want them to? Is it important? Randy brought this up, as he said, to try to get,
And I guess what the Planning Commission is asking is the broadened scope to include temporary signs going to meet with the board directive to look at political signs. The directive was to look at political signs.
I think that's where most of the complaints are coming from anyhow, is political signs, so it definitely should.
So if we want to broaden that to take a look at temporary signs in general, then we'll go back and take another look at it.
Board consensus. I'll say yes.
like,
We'll keep them working.
looks like the consensus is to do it. To look at it again or deeper. Got it? Okay. Good. Well, we don't have any committee appointments tonight, so let's get into policy discussion about the 2019 US 41 MDOT project, specifically the tunnel entrance features. Planning side? or-
The Planning Commission, as you remember, the board, the question came up about naming the tunnel quite some time ago, and the board said they didn't have any problem with it as long as they got the first right of refusal on the name. And so that's why it's back in front of the board tonight. It's been recommended by the Planning Commission that we proceed with the proposed name, and we're looking for concurrence by the board so we can move ahead with it.
Are you making a motion, or did you want to take questions, or?
If
It is a
anybody has any
recommendation.
questions or complaints, or
You have a recommendation from planning to go forward with it.
John?
let's get off the dime. I concur with the staff review and recommendation and move that we move ahead with their proposal.
Your suggestion. I'll second it.
Okay, well, the public probably doesn't know what the suggestion is.
oh, well, the
I'm not sure.
suggestion is to name the pass Pete's Pass be on both sides of the
See if John
of
can
the
zoom in on
underpass.
that.
Right, and, time is a concern because basically the project will be beginning probably sometime in, right about a month from now. The actual construction, preliminary work and then the construction will likely start by May for sure with the removal of weight restrictions.
And we're actually trying to get all our ducks in a row because there's a pre-construction meeting, I think it's about April the 4th,
It is, correct.
where they're going to talk about it.
2 weeks from now.
This is the planning packet that I took
And
the picture
for those of you who don't know where Pete's Pass came from, that is named after Pete Otavero, who was one of the larger contributors, and as well as contributing to the matching funds for the underpass so that we could get the grants. He also contributed a key right-of-way on the north side, correct? on the north side of that for the trail to continue on.
For the public's information, the clerk could read the memo. It's a relatively short memo that lays it out. Could read it into the record and the public would then know.
Yeah, I can,
From Jason?
yeah, I can do that. It's short. It's, Marquette Township Board of Trustees has previously approved the idea of naming the underpass entrance to honor a local developer who contributed a large donation towards the project. Staff has solicited a design concept for the Township Board to consider. Mr. Peter Odevaro has contributed a large financial contribution to the underpass project. Further, he has provided a critical easement on the north side of US 41 to ensure that both snowmobiles and non-motorized users will have safe passage through our commercial district for years to come. Staff consulted with Mr. Odevaro and asked him if it would be acceptable to name the underpass Pete's Pass, indicated that naming would be appropriate for him and his company. We believe that the proposed name is appealing and will serve as a definite frame of geographic reference for the location of the grade-separated subsurface US 41 crossing. And then at the regular meeting on March 13th, the Planning Commission unanimously approved the design concept and recommended that the Township Board consider it for approval.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, we do. We do in a second.
Second? Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Pete's Pass it is. Ernie?
Is that also including the requesting the Township Board approve the proposed design concept too? Or is that a separate motion?
That was the motion. It was
That's
attached.
all included in one?
Correct.
Yep.
That was attached to the motion.
Yeah, that's a concept drawing, that hasn't been, that's part of the MDOT thing.
Okay. I just want to make sure it was all inclusive.
Okay. Next is the residential stormwater issue, another planning commission recommendation.
And I would defer that to Roger, as in he made some recommendations, and actually he provided a sample of a form that would be filled out for that, and it'd probably be a whole lot smoother if he just explained it.
Sure, go ahead, Roger, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Let's read it.
Basically, my opinion was in the board packet, but at least the copy I had when I reviewed the board packet was missing page 3 of the opinion. I'm not sure if the Xerox machine, the document feeder ate it here or what, but in any event, this has been an ongoing inquiry in problem areas where residents or homeowners will fill in a ditch that's not part of their property to allow them to do that. So it alters the drainage course, and it affects perhaps their drainage, but maybe more importantly, their neighbor's drainage or somebody on the next street. And the Road Commission at your joint meeting a couple of months ago addressed that, indicating that while they can do the work, it's difficult for them in many instances, if the correction is in the right-of-way, to actually collect those funds, and is there the expense of doing that? And sometimes there is some substantial expense to correct that. So the question was raised whether it would be possible to add a lien on the property owner's tax bill if it goes that far and they don't pay the bill that's assessed by the Road Commission. And I won't go through the whole opinion because it was lengthy, but there's a very old statute that originated in 1897, and it's never been repealed, and it's never really been modified, and in fact, it's so old it still refers to Township Justices of the Peace. Township Justices of the Peace were abolished when the Michigan Constitution of 1963 was adopted, and then the legislature took action a couple years later to create district courts. But setting that aside, the district courts now have the authority of what township justices of the peace have. So the road commission would essentially do the work. They would send a notice to the property owner that, well, before even doing the work, they would notify the property owner that they need to make the correction themselves within 30 days. If they do not, the road commission can step in and do the work. The road commission then has to send an itemized statement showing what that expense entailed. And the property owner again has a period of time to pay that. And if they do not pay that, then the road commission needs to certify in a fairly detailed procedure that they complied with each and every step along the way. And there are some others that I haven't taken the time to enumerate. But if they do that, because the township is a taxing entity, we levy taxes, the road commission does not per se levy millage. We are allowed to then place that lien on the property tax, on the property owner's tax bill. And I have put together a proposed sample of what the road commission's certification might look like in getting that to the township, because one of the things that we're going to want from the road commission if we essentially enter into a joint venture like this is a verification or confirmation that they have complied with all of the steps along the way. So this sets forth a procedure and a timeline just indicating when notices were sent, how they were sent, who they were sent, who's the property owner involved, and then also affirming that the road commission would indemnify the township if the township relies upon their certification that this was all done correctly. So that form that was attached to the opinion is strictly a sample that the road commission would certainly have to look at and approve also. It doesn't make it come into effect just by this township board acting. It's a joint venture essentially between the road commission and the township. But the question posed to me is whether it would be possible to come up with a way to accomplish this. And I spoke with Jim Iwaniki at the road commission to see if they'd ever done anything like this before and if he had a specific format in mind. And the answer was no, that they don't have an arrangement with any other city, township, or village. But this looks like it could potentially work. If the board wants to entertain that, that's the mechanism that I would recommend to do it. It would be much too cumbersome for the township, for example, to enact its own ordinance and go out and do this work itself. The time and the expense would far outweigh the benefit.
We had a meeting, well, just in case the public didn't remember, last year, some of our board members and Jim Iwaniki and 3 of his board members, if I'm not mistaken. And we just kind of wanted to chew on what was going on in the township and in the county. And this was one of the requests that Jim and his board made of us was, you know, is there a way to help them do their job in keeping the roads in good, better shape, in the ditches? And once we knew what the whole process was, that was the impetus for getting a hold of Roger and seeing what would that look like. Yes, Roger.
And one other brief addition that I failed to mention is the objective is that in a perfect world, this will get accomplished and fixed long before it ever gets to a lien on anybody's tax bill. If the notification comes in, sometimes it might have been sod being put in or dirt being put in to level a ditch by a prior owner so that the current owner wasn't even aware that there had been a ditch there. If the notification is given and the property owner corrects the situation on their own, then that's the end of it. Same thing if the road commission comes in and does the correcting of the problem, sends the bill, and the bill gets paid, that's also the end of it. This is essentially a last resort mechanism that hopefully would be used very seldom, but in those limited circumstances when the need arises, it's a vehicle for imposing a lien on
And
the
that's what they were
property tax
looking
bill.
for, is to put some teeth into what they need to try to do not to penalize anybody, but to fix the ditches and the water movement. You know, the township spent a ton of money, the residents did, on fixing the roads, but because some of this stuff isn't done, or hasn't been done, or hasn't been covered, it's like, some of it's all for naught, as we're experiencing right now with all this extra water. So we're trying to help everybody out. Dave, you had your hand up first?
Yeah, there was, back that original meeting with the county, there was two options. There was an option to address the half a dozen problem properties in, basically within Trowbridge that are causing some drainage issues, or put a stormwater system in throughout Trowbridge. One addresses the property owners that are causing the problem. The other one has about a $10 million price tag on it. So it seemed the lesser of two evils to have the problem properties be taken care of and resolve the drainage issue, as opposed to all the residents coming up with money to take care of a stormwater system.
Pete?
This is not what people might think, that if the, the sand and the leaves come down to the culvert on the corner and it gets plugged up. This isn't for that. This is for something else. Say if somebody covers up from their yard because they don't want a big little gully in their yard or drainage just in front, they cover it completely and they cause other problems. That's where some of the problems are. But for the residents, you don't have to worry about if their culvert gets clogged up or something with sand and leaves and stuff like that. That's still the responsibility of the road commission.
Yeah, this is for people either unintentionally or not, that get rid of the ditch, which is the mechanism for moving the water.
And the other piece of it is those that construct a driveway and do not put a culvert in, which is required. You know, it's required to have a permit from the road commission to install a culvert in driveways. And you know, it is the major problem that we have with our roads and maintaining our roads is runoff. It's the water flow. You know, and the purpose of the ditch system, and it was designed as a ditch system to transmit the water to the logical places that it should get off, the creeks and rivers and streams and things such as that are in the township. So that was the purpose basically for the meeting with the road commission, was how can we, working with them, accomplish reestablishment of proper drainage in the township.
Dave?
Yeah, the planning commission's intent was to not make it labor intensive on the township. This form would get logged in by whomever, whether you do the zoning and planning administrator would log that in and move it forward from that, but that is basically the start and the end of our involvement in this. Just the fact that we've got the documentation that everything that was needed to be done was in fact done. And we don't want to go out and clean the ditches out. We don't want to go out and clean the culverts and replace culverts. We just want to give the county a little incentive to think that they can go out and do that and recoup their money.
Ernie?
Roger kind of answered part of it. I have, on the comments I wrote on, what happens if I buy a piece of property years back and it was all taken care of, filled in, whatever you want to call it, and all of a sudden they come up and said, you have to do all this now. Well, that current property owner is really on the hook for something that was done prior to him purchasing property in that, which is a major concern I have in that too. So how you get around that, I don't know in that.
That's why I'm glad it's with the county.
Right, and, you know, and that would be an issue that the county would address, you know, and it would be up to them how they would address that, whether they would require that property owner to comply with the requirement, or whether they would make the correction on their own dime. But that would not be a township issue.
Well, I can't see them making it on their own dime.
Well, if it's to reestablish, you
Oh,
know, if it's to
county.
reestablish the drainage, and, you know, yeah, you know, the issue of, you know, the property ownership is that it had not been enforced by the county previously. So I would suspect that there would be a fair defense that the property owner could make.
Roger was going to add something.
That certainly sounds like an unfair situation. However, whenever a person buys property, there are a lot of caveat emptor things out there in terms of, does my house have lead paint, or does it have asbestos, or are there fuel tanks underneath from some prior business that I didn't know about that now need to be remediated and removed? So I'm not sure how that gets addressed so that it's fair to everyone in every circumstance. That's one of those things that by buying property, sometimes you also buy some liabilities along with it. And again, it comes back to the issue of there would be a distinction of whether there was a pre-existing drainage ditch that someone filled in, as opposed to now there's development in this area where it was previously wooded and we've got a lot more pavement and there's a lot more runoff, so we should start creating some drainage ditches. This isn't even talking about passing the cost of creating those ditches onto the property owner. I suppose there could be, that might be a special assessment situation if it's a new subdivision or a new site condominium project or something. There are all kinds of ways of addressing those because, again, these would be improvements in the rights of way. So it would depend on whether or not it could be shown that a prior property owner had interfered with or taken some active measure to interfere with the drainage, as opposed to just needing a new one because circumstances have changed.
Well, and I like to think of us as being some of the educators too for some of this stuff. So if we've got somebody moving into the township or a township resident moving to a different location, that's good for them to find out. Most people think that their property goes to the road, and it doesn't, and that's such a misnomer. So if they don't learn anything about anything besides that, that's a plus. That's a real helpful thing for them.
That has been addressed internally for us, because they will not, for a new development, they will not receive the permit to go forward without presenting the permit from the road commission for the culvert or for the driveway.
Dave?
The problem is primarily in Trowbridge, where it's been a long year since it's been platted, and according to the Marquette County Road Commission, when that was platted, every road in there had a road ditch on both sides. So if you look out in your yard and there's not a road ditch, then someplace along the way, whether it was you or 3 property owners before you, it got filled in. And if it's creating a drainage issue, I'm not suggesting, and the county certainly didn't suggest, that they're going to go out there and reestablish all the road ditches. What they did say they would address is those areas that were filled in or the culverts that are plugged that are creating drainage problems for their neighbors. And nobody wants to go out there and re-ditch all of Trowbridge. We just want to clean up the drainage issues that we have so we can save the roads that everybody's paying $1.5 million on for the next 12 years.
For maintenance.
When they put in the driveway, do they get a permit and it has to be inspected?
The road commission's part of all of that in the initial, and that's what Randy was saying, that the road commission will be informed when there's new construction going on, so they'll be able to tell the people right away what they need to do.
When you're doing new construction, the first thing that has to happen before you can get a building permit is you have to come to the township for a zoning compliance certificate, or the county resource management will not give you a building permit. The zoning and planning department here in the township has agreed that before they'll give a zoning compliance certificate, they have to receive the permit from the county for the driveway and the culvert. And without that, they won't issue a zoning compliance permit. And that's part of the education of anybody coming in to build a new house or to do some significant change. They need that permit. With that comes all the information on what size culvert. There's minimum size culverts, there's minimum width culverts. All that comes with the county's permit. And until zoning and planning administrators get that, you can't get a zoning compliance permit to go to resource management.
And that is a change in the procedure. The procedure previously was we would issue the approval with the caveat that they go to the planning commission to get their permit, or to the road commission to get the permit. Now they have to present that permit before the zoning compliance is issued.
So they are the agency that should be inspecting it and okaying it and
Correct.
stuff like that.
That's correct.
Some of the problem goes
Maintaining it.
back on their enforcement of their own policy.
Well, and that's why they were kind of asking us for help, is how can, and we said, well, what can we do to help? So this is our last ditch effort, pardon the pun. Ernie?
I think the other thing, in reading through the comments from our attorney in that, he did not reference any other municipality in the state that I could see that done anything like this in that, so are we breaking ground in that, and we may have caused some problems in the future?
We have been on the forefront on many different issues, and this is just one more of them.
I can't speak about statewide, but certainly in the UP. You know, with regard to the Marquette County Road Commission, they have not ever done this in the past. But I can't say that that is the same case downstate, where they've got much more active drain management.
Like Dave said, it's a little bit different in Trowbridge Park than a lot of other subdivisions, stuff like that, because of the hills and what we're trying to do and keep the water off of into the road, and it's gonna go somewhere.
Well, it sounds like we're singling out Trowbridge Park, but you gotta remember
It's
there's
everywhere.
54% of the residents in the township live in the Trowbridge Park platted area. And that's why that's such an issue.
Okay. Do we need direction, or is this, I know it says discussion, but is there,
The direction that the planning commission is seeking is, does the board see any problem with proceeding with this type of now, obviously, there's some coordination with the Marquette County Road Commission with this form, and then there's a pretty minor text amendment that would go along with that once this form was approved. If that's where we're at, it's more of an update than anything else, and get the board's blessing for the direction the planning commission is heading.
John?
If you're seeking, if the planning commission is seeking the consensus of the board, let's have an indication of what the consensus is.
Well, it's
I'm all
always
for it.
best to have a motion, just for the record, if nothing else, when you're trying to find a date that action was taken.
A motion would be
So
better.
motion to direct the planning commission,
Yeah.
were you kind of going that way, or?
Yeah, I think if they want that kind of consensus, we should give them a motion to take action.
I think your recommended motion is the last paragraph of the transmittal memo.
So to follow the recommendation of the planning commission to implement the, are we implementing a text amendment? Is that?
I guess with a motion, we would move ahead with the text amendment as it's been presented tonight, to include the form.
Sound good, Roger? Does that give you enough direction?
This will actually come back to Roger from the planning commission when we
So maybe
actually
the
firm it up.
motion should be to forward the form to the road commission.
Well, at this
Nope.
point, the motion is to send it back to the planning commission, I believe.
Okay.
That is the motion. Send it back to planning commission, directing them to move ahead as
Okay.
presented.
And I'll second
Doesn't have
whoever
to
made the
come through
motion.
us, okay,
Do you want to make that motion?
You did.
okay. Are we good?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Wow, it's hard to get some of that done sometimes.
That's the hard part about recommendations, is you gotta kind of get them right. So it's going to the planning commission. All right. 2019 Roads Maintenance Bid Award. Is that you too, Dave, or
Yes,
Randy, or-
unfortunately. How about if I just read the road committee's recommendation to the manager?
Okay.
As a result of the March 5th, 2019 Road Committee meeting, the committee makes the following recommendations with respect to the 2019 road rehabilitation maintenance bids received and opened on February 27th. Inasmuch as Farner Asphalt Sealers LLC was the only bid received, and that bid was well within the estimated cost projected by UPEA, it's recommended that they be awarded the project with the following amendments with respect to the bid sheet enclosed within the advertisement for bids. Now, you've got that in part of your packet tonight, and I'll just refer to the line numbers so you can get an idea of what we're doing. And it's, you got two bids sections in there. One is a base bid and the other is an alternate bid. And the recommendations are from the base bid, remove the location ID numbers C1, F1, J1, and H1. And C1 and F1 should be removed to accommodate the addition of C1 and F1 alternate options. That is to remove the crack seal and include chip seal. J1 should be removed as this maintenance concern results from the last year's culvert replacement by the Marquette County Road Commission, and as such should not be considered as part of the road rehabilitation project. That is the cold patch that they put in at Fair Street after they did the culvert repair.
Fair and Vandenboom.
Or Fair and Vandenboom, and they should come back and repair that appropriately. And then H1 should be removed as the maintenance concern would be best in a joint repair effort with the Marquette County Road Commission. That is Moran Street, where the drainage of that creek has to be gotten across the road before you repair the road. Otherwise, we're just throwing good money after bad. And then from the alternate options, add the C1 and F1 alternate option, which is to make a chip seal. And part of the chip seal is the crack seal, so it's part of the chip seal option. And the cost adjustments resulting from the recommendations in A and B above will result in a contract price of $54,635.08, and that's just slightly below our $55,000 budget.
John?
Move to concur with the township manager in his recommendation that we approve the road committee recommendation of approval of the bid of $54,635.08 bid for the continued road improvements in the township.
I'll support.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Down to public comment. Any public comment? We have a couple publics. Come on up. Don, if you please, name and address so we know who you are, where you are. Yeah.
Stiffen up.
My name is Don Britton. I'm with Chocolate Township. Not on the board, just I live in Chocolate Township. I'm involved with the easement that Pete Odeverl's giving to the DNR on the north side of 41. So I guess my question would be, I maybe talk to Randy about this, or number one is the size of the tunnel. I wanted to make sure it's compatible with the groomer to get through. Number two is I'd like to get involved with possibly the pre-bid or the pre-construction meeting. Hopefully we can acquire some material, stone, whatever, to do some more work on the easement with the Pete Odeverl property.
Sounds like good Randy questions, but now he knows them so he can get you an answer.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Don. Anybody else? Any comments on the public comment? Okay, we're good. Announcements? Anybody have anything to share? Nope, not much going on. Manager's report.
You do have a printed report in your packet. Attorney Zappa dealt with the first part of it, with the status of the ordinances and the Whetstone Village unit inspection agreement. Those are all handled and finalized. We will be, Superintendent of Public Works and I are finishing up our financial recommendations that'll be coming back to your meeting in hopefully April 2nd to establish the definitions of the various funds and levels that those should be at. We're going to be rolling that on a 5 to 7 year average to address it with the target of being ultimately a 10-year, and then it would be a rolling 10-year average for the calculation in the budget process. Let's see. I was going to talk about potholes and surface. We've done that, as well as the melt runoff, so I really didn't have anything else to add unless you have any questions.
Anything from the manager? Okay. Review the motions then, Mr. Clerk.
Okay, not too many tonight, but we approved the consent agenda as presented, first motion. Second motion was to approve the regular agenda as amended. We removed the county solid waste presentation. Third motion was to approve the tunnel entrance design. Fourth motion was to direct the Planning Commission to move forward with the stormwater recommendation. And the fifth motion was to approve the 2019 road maintenance bid.
Thank you. Anything for future agenda that we need to be aware of, or John?
Now that we know that if the township, its center, and the rest of the building is to have any power during a loss of service, we need to take steps to put in place our own generator. I know that it's planned in the budget, but I'd like to have asked that the manager indicate specifically what needs to be ordered to satisfy our needs and put it on paper so that we can move ahead.
Yep, we're awaiting that now. We've had JP Electric come in and do their analysis. They're working with the Board of Light and Power and are putting together a proposal that'll be coming back to you as soon as I receive it.
Thank you.
Anything else? We're good? Any board member comment? Start that way. Pete?
Oh, you want to talk about what? In our, down by, on the end of Vanderboom and Grove, or well field area, there's people going out there walking their dogs. But some of them are not picking up the dirt. We have bags down there, just like any other place that has bags. They're there to pick up the waste. So I would appreciate if people would do that, just because there's feel they're out in the woods a little bit, but there is people walking and using that for trails and stuff like that, so I would appreciate that. Next thing is cleanup date for the township is May 18th, be here at 10 o'clock. But we'd like to try to get more people from the township to come out and help. So that's May 18th at 10 o'clock here.
Okay. Dave, anything?
Yeah. To answer the couple of public comment questions, that pre-construction meeting is on April the 4th at 5:30, and that is an open meeting. It's going to be presented by MDOT over in the community room. And the other question on 5:30 to 7, yeah. And the other question on the size of the tunnel to accommodate the groomers is that has been addressed. And you'll get a look at it at the pre-con meeting if you want to know what size it is.
Can I comment on that? The state called me last June, I guess, somewhere in there, asked for my recommendation on the size. I just wanted to make sure, I'm not too worried about the width, it has to be at least 12 feet.
So you have to show up to find that out now.
I remember that in some of the other plans. I don't remember
I think it's 10
specifically.
feet wide by what? I can't.
It's 14.
And I believe that's where they got their information, is they went and did a little research from guys like you, and that's been included in there, but you need to take a look at it.
If I'm not mistaken, I think is it 14 feet?
10 by
10 by
14?
14.
Yep.
How high is the Greenwood down?
Then a foot of snow.
Yeah.
Well, and then whatever snows.
14 foot.
Okay. Anything, Randy?
Nope.
I don't have anything either. Ernie?
A couple of things. I have, going through the packet net and from the solid waste, they're talking about recyclables and the cost per ton for recyclables and that. So that's something we have to keep track of, see what's going on there and how that's all gonna be put together and that, and how that's gonna affect our costs overall in the long run.
Multiple year.
Hopefully that presentation they're gonna give will answer a lot of that. They just had something come up, they couldn't do it this time.
Another thing, going through the financial statement highlights and that thing, I look at them and that, and I'm looking at the wastewater and the water funds and that, and looking at the wastewater revenue for 2018, it was 1%, and then you look at the water revenue for December 18th with 7.5%. So their revenue went up 7.5%, but wastewater only went up 1%. Yet all the water coming in goes through there. So why is there a differential there that much? I can see a little bit, but it seems like there's
Well, it's because not all of the water customers are also sewer customers.
that big a differential.
Yeah, there's a sizable group that have water but not, that are still on septic.
Okay. Following that through, then you look at the February sales, there's only a 1% differential between the two of them and that. So there's
Yeah,
things like this here
less water sales.
and that,
And there are, you know, I will tell the board, and some of the members know that, there are some issues with the city's conversion that they're doing with Johnson Controls that is it's not compatible with our system. We're trying to work through those, so we're getting some less than accurate figures.
A couple other things. I was at the Marquette Township Business Association as your representative today. A few things came up in that. They're looking at trying to get a individual or someone to do some kind of a direction and marketing goals for that organization. See if it's going to be beneficial for them. They have 50 members right now in that. They're looking at the brochure at this point in time. It was made 2 years ago. So they're looking at maybe updating that. They talked about the joint meeting that's coming up in May 21st. They're looking at putting together an agenda that they would present to, at that point in time, for the board to discuss in that. On the Catch the Vision update, they addressed that and addressed their donation, whatever that's going to be at this point in time, Matt. One of the comments that came up is, the tunnel is great up on this end. They says, but what are they gonna do on our end, on the east side? And that always seems to come up in that, because there's so much traffic down there, and how do you get across there and that, and so. These are the kind of the highlights that went on at the meeting today and that.
Maybe we can give them an update on what the DDA is working on then
Okay.
for that.
Ben, I had a question for Ernie. At one of the meetings that we had here with the Business Association, Scott, I brought up about posters and stuff like that, and Scott said that that'd be a good thing to discuss at one of our meetings. Did they ever do that?
No.
Is that it, Marty?
That's all I have.
Thanks. John, anything to share? Dave, Dan?
I just have a question on the notepads, where we stand with,
Yeah, I just asked Randy for that. Everybody's got different wishes, apparently.
Yeah, working with 906 to try and accommodate a
Yes.
single unit that will accommodate all of the various desires.
good luck.
Well, it's not that bad, but there's some very specific things that a few board members want to be able to do with their computers. So we've got 906 working on to see how we accommodate that, so everybody can have the same thing.
Did you
Are
do
you
that?
laughing, Dave?
In my defense, he
Oh, name.
He didn't mention any
nagged
names.
me about 3 weeks for that, so I finally gave him my wish list.
He hadn't
because I
mentioned any
was
names,
nagging
Dave.
He won the burgundy one.
Did you want the wagon back that came in?
Whatever's on my list, I can't even remember anymore.
There were several board members that had some very specific desires that they wanted to see. So we've got 906 working on that to kind of pull it all together and give us a proposal on something that everybody can utilize.
I would like to see voice activated.
No, wait, let's not add more things to the list.
They're on there. Part of the problem with, we can't just go to Best Buy and buy computers. We can't, because we have to be able to connect to the server. And when I got my notepad, I went to Best Buy, I bought it myself, and came to find out it wasn't gonna work with the server and being able to have us all connected. So we had to go out and get a more expensive one. So there are specifics that we have to have for the township. It's not just, picking out a computer. That's why it's taking a little bit longer.
Well, don't make mine too complicated.
No, it's the inside workings.
They don't all have to be identical.
They're not going to be.
No, but they need the same programming.
Right, they need to be
I
able to,
understand that, but
that's the hard part.
Big screen.
Anything else for comment? Nope, just need a motion then.
So moved.
to adjourn.
Is that a second, John?
I was encouraging it. The motion was to adjourn.
You
Yes.
said
I'll
second,
support
it. We all
okay.
knew
All in
that.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. 7:36.